All right. So I'm excited. Today we have a very special guest, attorney Mark Sherman. Mark, why don't you tell us just a little bit about your background? They actually have, let me tell you what they know about you. They have seen the commercial for your law firm.
When I'm contemplating the law on the
Yes,
beach.
and you're walking along the beach with your client. I'm sure you
Yeah,
do that all the time. Yeah.
yeah,
And then you and then I showed them a few little just like headlines of some cases that you worked on. They were
sure.
like interesting cases, like the
Yeah,
lunch ladies stealing the
yeah,
money
the lunch ladies.
and
Yeah,
the kid who stole the test.
right,
Whatever, right.
right.
So anyway, so that's what they know, but let us know anything else that you think would be useful.
Sure. Look, I was an English major in college. I went to University of Pennsylvania. I love to write. I love to be a journalist. That's what I really wanted to do. It was hard to make a living doing that. And I went to law school, and I'd worked with you a little bit at Court TV, and
Oh yeah, they don't even know about that. They don't even
yeah, I
know
mean,
what you.
we were at Court TV together, and I love the law. I love journalism. And then I really liked helping people. My father was a criminal defense lawyer. I watched him do what he did. And then I kind of came back to Connecticut after working at big law, which is a big law firms. These law firms have, tens of hundreds of people, and it wasn't as personal. So I really wanted to come back to Connecticut and do, one-on-one and be more of that lawyer that runs around and drives around all day in their car, which is what I do. I drive around the state. I'm also a pretty big into internet, being an internet lawyer, where I've done a lot of search engine optimization, and a lot of people find me online. So I get a lot of different people from all walks of life. And every day is different, which is great.
All right, you already jumped ahead. You answered so many of these questions. I could just cross them off. All right. Why
Sure.
you became a lawyer, what influenced you to become a lawyer? What about why? And I know I know you do a lot of different kinds of law, but in particular, my students seem very interested in you as a criminal defense lawyer,
Sure.
and they
So,
have a
so
lot of questions about that. And so, what in particular made you interested in that line of work? Because a lot of people, I think, for various reasons, you know,
yeah,
you know.
my father had done it. I had watched him do it. I went to law school. It definitely is the most interesting. And there's so many cool areas of law, like copyright and trademark and entertainment and corporate and real estate. But I love the idea that people make mistakes and people deserve a second chance. And that's really what all my job's about. Is, look, most of my clients are guilty. I'm sure that's a question you guys have. Most of my clients get arrested, and that's because they're guilty. Now, it doesn't mean that they don't deserve a second chance, but my job is to sort of tell a story. And that's where my journalism background came in, Seth, is because, if you just tell a good story, and you and I see this on the internet all the time, tell a good story and it'll sell. And I can sell stories, and I write stories, and I tell people stories, and I try to get them a break in court so they can put their case behind them, and keep their job and keep their marriage together and keep their reputations and all that. So that's sort of what I do, and why I do this.
All right. Well, I'm going to jump around because you actually, Diego had a question about something you literally said, which was because you said the exact same line in your law firm's
Right,
commercial, which
right,
is, we think that everybody deserves a second chance
right.
and should get one. And Diego asked, like, do you really think that that's true, that everybody deserves to think, the worst people in the world, like and Chris also asked about like representing Jeffrey Dahmer or something, like, does he deserve a second chance? So I'm
Right.
just
So
curious about this.
right. So when you're a lawyer, look, it's hard. You have a job to do, and you're required by law to help these people. And I get to choose who I represent. Some lawyers work for the government, and they're assigned people to represent. They don't have as much of a choice. So I can pick and choose who I work with. So there's sometimes, right, when me, Mark Sherman, thinks this person's an awful person, they've assaulted children, they've done the worst things. I'm sometimes conflicted between deciding whether or not, my job is to get them off or get them a better deal, versus me thinking deep down, these are awful people that I'm never going to be able to change. But the answer is yes. There are some really, and they look, it usually is a mental health or addiction problem, but there are some really evil people. But But Seth, that's like 5% of my clients. Like 95% are good people who are sick, fighting alcohol, fighting drugs, depression, whatever. And then the other 5%, the other that's 95%. The other 5% could be pretty awful. And look, I can't get their cases to go away, but I can certainly help them and their families get through a really tough process.
All right. Well, we have a whole section later.
Sure.
We're gonna have some time to talk
Sure.
about that 5% basically, because
Sure.
that's really of interest to a lot of them. But let's finish up with a little bit about your career. Do you remember the very first trial you ever had, and how did it go? And what did it feel like?
It was a DUI, and my client was guilty, but he was so likable, and he refused the test. So basically he was stumbling around telling the cops, all this bad stuff, calling the cops all these names, and it was in Connecticut, and I just made them like him so much that they gave him a not guilty because they were rooting for him. And again, that goes back to telling stories and getting right. So the jury, and maybe your students will ask, like, the jury's incredible, right? Because you have to convince 6 people unanimously. And I'll take those odds every day over a one judge. Like, one judge is a lot harder to convince than 6 people.
We in our class are having mock trials in 2 weeks, and we have juries. I got a jury full of teachers and administrators who are showing up to hear these cases, and so there's actually more questions about it. They want some tips on your further mock trial too. All right, Let me just see if there's anything else important here in this. All right, we'll jump down to some of these questions. Like, do you like being a lawyer? What is it is it fun to be a lawyer? Is it enjoyable?
Look, it's emotionally, it's pretty hard. Like, people are coming to you at a really tough time in their lives, and you meet them at the worst time of their life, one of the worst times in their lives, and you have to be able to take in their stress and their energy and their nervous energy, and then be patient and kind enough and to listen to them, and then take what they're giving you and create something hopeful for them. So it's a challenge, and you can get paid really well, which is nice. And so sometimes you have to chase money, and, people are always, look, if people are stealing, chances are they don't have a lot of money to pay their lawyer. So, it's a lot of hustle. It's a lot of marketing, and it's a lot of competition. Like, I surround myself with trial lawyers, and look, they're like warriors and savages. Like, they're the people that are going to fight for you and your family. If they're, when everything else is lost, they're the fight. So that's who I'm dealing with on day to day. So my competition are these savage trial lawyers who are fighting for the big case. So I've got, as you see in the news, I get some big cases. Sometimes people steal them from me. Sometimes I steal them from them. It's just the way it goes. So you have to have a thick skin. You can't take anything personally. And one thing I do that I will pump every time I have a chance to with young people is I do what's called transcendental meditation every morning. And it is the best thing I ever did, and it's changed my career. And I just started 12 years ago. It's great.
Yeah, well, this is an unanticipated direction, but look, let's talk about it for a minute.
Yes.
We have this ridiculous thing in high school that they call keep time, that kids are supposed to learn about mindfulness and stuff. It's a disaster. Let's learn from somebody who it actually made a difference for.
Yes.
Right.
Look, for those that like to lift weights or athletes in your class, you would never do 150 reps of weights. You would always give your muscles a rest. What transcendental meditation is, it shuts your mind off for 20 minutes a day. And it literally shuts it off. Not sleeping, not listening to music or people talking. It's shutting it off for 20 minutes a day. You wake up out of it. Your eyes are clear. It's the greatest secret to life. It's a physiological thing. It's not a Zen thing. It's incredible, and it just makes.
And how do you do it? And just very briefly, how do you do it?
You literally close your eyes. You repeat a mantra a couple times, and it's like riding a bike. Once they teach you how to do it, your mind goes off. Nothing goes through your head, and you wake up in 20 minutes, and you feel completely refreshed and calm. It's an incredible. Your mind's a muscle, and you got to give it a rest sometime. People go through 50 years of life, and they never rest their mind. Sleeping's not rest. It's not. So. That's a side lesson, but I'll tell you, it's changed my career.
That is amazing. And that was not one of the questions, but I'm glad we had that discussion. But let's move on.
Yep.
All right, so we're not going to spend too much time on this, but this really was a big area of interest in this section that I labeled like morality. It was like, and this is about those 5%. And a lot of people wanted to know, like, do you feel bad about representing someone like that? And also, do you ever turn down cases because the person is so
Great question.
reprehensible to you? Things like that.
Yeah, look, if someone's nutty enough to murder somebody, right? And then they confide in their lawyer and saying, I did it. Like, had I know that the next day he's not going to wake up and go, damn, I should never have told my lawyer, I'm going to murder him too. Like, there's some scary people out there that are just chemically imbalanced. So I have antennas now after 25 years of practicing law to know which people to stay away from, but it doesn't really happen often. Like, I'm telling you, people are generally good. Even people who accidentally kill someone or kill someone in a heat of passion. It's usually not crazy intentional. Usually there's some element of unintentionality, recklessness, or accidental that goes on.
All right, so I'm just going to gently push back based on what I'm reading from my students, because when I asked you, you asked, do you ever turn down because someone was so bad? You went to, you turned down a case because you're scared of the person, basically, right? That seems like a different issue to me than this person did such a horrible thing.
Right, more, you're the morality of it.
That this person doesn't deserve my time. Like I'm gonna spend my precious time and my resources and stuff to represent this horrible person. I
don't judge like that, and I don't think most of my colleagues do either. And I guess it's hardened me, right? It hardens you because, you know, it's a great question, but I tend to be able to separate my moral outrage from my duty to represent this person. And that's sort of how it goes. So yeah, it's something that crosses my mind, but not often. Like, people, this is the job I chose, and there's going to be some awful things happening, and I still do it.
All right. No, I thank you for that. Like, that was really a good, honest.
Yep.
I hope that all my everybody's listening closely. All right. Just in this last thing, how does it feel? Like, when the verdict comes in, like in a case where you've worked so hard, and like when you've won cases, when you've lost cases, what is that? This is another interesting question I had. Just like, what does that feel like? Is it like winning a sporting event? Is it like,
you know, it's, you know, I do civil and criminal. So civil, we're just civil trials when you generally just go to a jury and ask for money. And you know, there's no freedom situation. No one's going to jail. They're just either gonna win a lot of money or gonna lose a lot of money. That feels like a game show, right? Because the stakes aren't that high. I mean, granted, it's somebody's, you know, maybe personal fortune, but usually I represent businesses. That's the civil. That's not probably what your students are thinking about. Criminally, it's awful. It's high stakes. Usually when you have to go to trial, it means that you couldn't make a deal before then. So it means there's probably jail and a lot of it at stake. And, you know, you got to look this person in the eye and say, I just saved your life, or I just lost. I just was your last line of defense, and I lost, and I didn't do a good enough job, and you're going to jail for X amount of years. And I've lost cases too. Like, I lost a case where a guy was accused of sexually assaulting his daughter. I don't think he did it. I still don't. But the accusation was, you know, basically coached by the mother, I believed, and he got 25 years. It was awful. But then we won a case where someone ran over someone in a crosswalk. You know, my client probably wasn't paying us as much attention as she could, and we got not guilty there, and she walked out of court. So it can go either way, but the answer is, it is extremely intense. I don't like it. I try as hard as I can to avoid going to trial. So that's one thing your students should understand. Most 90% of the cases plead out, 95% plead out, they resolve, right? The prosecutor doesn't want to take a chance. Defendant, my client, doesn't want to take a chance. So that's why a high percentage of cases plead out. Plus the evidence is usually pretty convincing, and you make a deal. 5% go to trial.
all right. All right. Well, that's a good segue because we have so many cases. We have so many like what I label kind of war stories, but there's too many even to ask. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to read these questions, but don't
Love
even
it.
respond, and then you'll answer whichever one you want when you're done.
Okay.
Right? Okay. So Raja wanted to know what the worst case you ever worked on was, and what the best case was, and Andy wanted to know what the craziest case is. And Gio from First Period and Cami and Valerie wanted to know the hardest, most difficult case. And Valerie wanted to know the most famous case. Chris wanted to know the most expensive case. Daniela wanted to know the most complicated case. Mikhail wanted to know the most intense case. Gabriel wanted to know the most popular case. Jamie wanted to know the most memorable case. Elizabeth wanted to know the most boring case. Elizabeth and Valerie wanted to know the most funniest or most ridiculous case you've worked on. Aaron wanted to know the most interesting case. And Brandon wanted to know what is the most gruesome crime you have defended. So answer any or none.
Got it. I got on some Barstool Sports website for doing the lunch lady case. The lunch ladies were these ladies who stole money every day at the high school lunchroom, every day, every year, allegedly, for many, many years. And that's gotten a lot of media attention. It was on the cover of the New York Post, and that was a pretty high profile case for me. I also, and that's still going on, that's going to trial. There, she's innocent. She didn't even know this was going on, but it got a lot of publicity. The first lifeguard ever to get arrested was another big high profile case of mine, because they arrested a lifeguard for missing a safe, and the child went underneath the water for 5 minutes and still survived, but they arrested him for just being not on his phone, not texting a friend, not talking to another lifeguard. But at Chelsea Piers here in Connecticut, they arrested the lifeguard for missing a save, which had never happened. So at a lot of my court
What
dates,
was the charge again? Like what?
it was reckless endangerment for being so careless. And my big defense is that not every accident or mistake is a crime. So there was no criminal intent. There was no recklessness. He walked around and is on video, but we would have all these lifeguards in the audience every time we went to court. So I rallied the lifeguard association because I wanted public opinion to put pressure on the court to say, hey, you can't arrest a first responder. That's really rough. Like, unless they're like high or drunk or doing something egregious. So that was another one that we did. I've had some celebrity cases that, I can't mention their names, but some major rock bands and stuff that were, accused of partying too hard. We did that in Stanford. Those are all really good ones. I've gotten, so sometimes when clients can't pay me, they pay me in barter. And so as a criminal defense lawyer, unlike a lot of lawyers, I got a Porsche one time. I got a trip to Colorado. You can get like really cool things. This one guy bought like purses and pocketbooks for my entire office. So that was really fun.
Is that right? But hold on though. Doesn't that suggest something shady is going on? Like if they don't have enough money to pay their lawyer, but they have, they could send you on a fancy trip or buy you a Porsche.
Right. So yeah, I mean, look, they're a little shady, but I declare it and I pay tax on it, and it's a win-win. I got all these Rolexes and I sold them immediately, but like you really, it's like being a criminal lawyer is like what you see on TV. It's an extremely gritty. If you like to hustle, if you have grit, you
that's actually in one of our random miscellaneous questions. Brandon asked, "Are you the real life Saul Goodman, and do you relate with him?"
That's
your
funny you say that. Like
that's
I haven't watched the show in a long time, but it's a combination of Saul and Ray Donovan, and then you're like also kind of a nerd too, because you got to like read a lot of cases and write a lot of papers, and there's a little bit of everything. That's why I like it. It really keeps you on your toes.
All right, that's great. That's another good section we've gone through. All right, our next section. Let's talk just general about the criminal justice system. And this is something that we've actually only talked a little bit in class so far about. But after the mock trial, we do like 2 weeks on criminal justice reform and different issues about that. And so let's just go broad first. Like Emerson wants to know, do you believe that the justice system is fair?
So, I kind of feel like there's an expression that says the criminal justice system stinks, but it's the best we got. So, it's hard because in this day and age, when you're accused of something, especially with social media and with the internet, it's very hard for people to understand that just because there's that presumption of innocence, right?
Right.
So when I talk to my jurors, I get to interview every juror on my trials before they come to my trial. I say, are you comfortable with walking out of my trial thinking that this guy probably did it, but the state did not make their burden of proof beyond the reasonable doubt? And then they have to tell me if they're comfortable, because I said, that's right. You might actually think this guy did it, but you have to understand that the system requires the government to prove it with a lot of evidence, not just speculation, not just a hunch. So it's very hard to get people over that hurdle. And I think as your students go through the mock trial, they'll understand, like, you sometimes have to concede to a jury, look, guys, I know it looks bad. I know you might think they actually did it, but you have a duty as a juror to hold yourself to the law and say, government, you came close, but you didn't prove it beyond the reasonable doubt, and then let them go. So it's hard. It's hard.
This is gold stuff. So I just want to stick with this, right? Because we got mock trial questions, and I know who these people are too who are asking these questions, right?
Yeah.
Because some of them are pretty, but Vincent and Aiden, they are, because they're going to be cross-examining some very key witnesses. And so they want to know, like, what's your strategy? How you nail this guy to the wall? Like, what's the best way to pull this off?
So the best way to cross-examine, and it's a very common training thing, is you do it in chapters. You don't go through every fact and every detail. You think about, what do you want to accomplish from that witness, right? What do you know what they're going to say. So in cross-examination, you never want to ask a question that you don't know what the answer is going to be, because if they lie to you, you'll have something to impeach them. You'll have a prior statement of theirs. You'll have a text message. You'll have something. You never ask an open-ended question where you can get burned. So break it up into chapters. Chapter 1 is show them they're a liar because of this. Chapter 2 is show them that their credibility is doubt because of this. Be really organized in chapters. It doesn't have to be a long thing either. Get in and out of your cross-examination quickly.
All right, that's good. All right, one of our 2 mock trials has a difficult fact case, and this is why Valerie is asking about this. What are tips about how to build a good defense in court? Because it's a case where it's a woman who killed her husband, who was a battered woman syndrome case, right? And so immediately when we introduced the case, there was a lot of skepticism, even in our classroom, like, how could this woman claim that she was acting in self-defense when her husband was asleep when she killed him? Like, this is a really hard fact scenario, but we have to push this battered woman syndrome. So
Right.
what are the tips about how are they going to pull this off with the very difficult factual scenario in this
Right.
case?
So I don't know how far you can go on your mock trial, but a great way to do it is you get an expert witness. Do they have experts in your case?
There is an expert witness in this case, played by Josh, and he is going
So he's
to
the defense
testify
expert
about.
or the government? Is he the defense expert or the government?
He's a defense expert talking about why the battered women syndrome is real, and why what it's like for someone to suffer from it.
Right. Again, have your students tell a story about a woman. If you can get the jury to feel like they're in her shoes of all her battery. Now, she's going to try to get it. Your defendant is going to try to tell a lot of stories about this, how the decedent, or her husband who's dead, did all this stuff. But if you can get it into an expert, it carries more weight with the jury. There's actually a jury instruction where the judge tells the jury, you can give the experts an added, some added value to their testimony because they're experts. So get it through the expert, use that expert really wisely, and have the expert ready to be cross-examined. Prepare your expert.
All right. This is such good stuff. I hope that people are going to really dig this. All right. Last one about the mock trial. Gio from first period wants to know, what's the powerful opening statement? How do you win? And first period is not doing that case. He's doing a case where this kid college kid is being tried for murder because of a hazing, fraternity hazing thing gone wrong. So
So on opening statements, the cardinal rule, number one rule is don't promise anything you can't deliver in trial. So if you're gonna preview your evidence, make sure you don't overpromise. Leave them with, set up your issues. As long as you have a solid way to prove people that they're lying, preview that, and then be able to prove it. So don't overpromise anything, because the minute you go too far with dramatics, like be dramatic in the closing, don't be dramatic in the opening. There's no reason to.
All right, that's good advice. Be dramatic in the closing, not the opening. All right, that is good for our mock trial. Let's see, what else? I just got some random miscellaneous.
Sure.
None of these I think are that important.
Sure.
So I think we could be done. Unless, do you have anything else that you think would be
Oh,
important to share with our
yeah.
students?
Look, I think if people are interested in criminal law, reach out to people like me. We're always, you never know when we could use someone around to answer phones, to run errands. Just being around it is a great way to understand how it's like to be an attorney. So it's not, in high school, it's never, the worst that someone's gonna say is, no, we don't have any room, but like, reach out. You'll be surprised that we love having extra pair of hands around the office, especially in the summer. So don't ever be afraid to reach out to anybody. That's number one.
All right.
Right. And then number two is learn, do meditation. Feel very strong with that. Number three is learn how to write and listen. Like, being a good listener and being a good writer is the best way to be a good attorney.
All right. Those were good lessons for being a good attorney. And how about lessons for life? Because I totally thought you were going to say, like, don't talk to the cops, if or something like that.
Right. So lessons for life. Look, I agree with you. The cops are in the business. Their business is to arrest people. So no matter how nice they are, they can trick you. They don't have to be honest with you. They're generally really good people who are trying to do their job, but their job is to arrest and investigate. So, they're in the business of arresting people. They don't have to arrest everyone. They investigate, and if you're innocent, they won't arrest you. But the idea is, don't speak to them unless you know your rights. Always call an attorney and be respectful.
All right. And if they do, the great attorney would be to call Mr. Sherman.
Call me if you're in Connecticut.
Exactly. All right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate this. This was great. I think my students will really enjoy it. We're going to watch it, I think, on Thursday.
Oh, awesome, Seth. Awesome. Are we all, just tell me when to snap off. I want to talk for 2 more minutes.
Okay, I'll stop the recording.